Hello everyone, welcome to the Git tutorial. So in this session, I'm going to talk about Git. So all the topics that I'm going to talk on Git is something that what DevOps engineers on a day-to-day basis that they are going to do using Git. And in order to know that, you should know the basics of Git. And in that aspect, this is the session one of our Git real-time usage as a DevOps engineer. So without any delay, let's get started. So as a DevOps engineer, you often play with Git. So in order to know Git, why Git, okay, what is the purpose of Git? We discussed about that Git is a version control system. But a lot of people will ask, what is Git versus what is GitHub? That is one of the most common question that is also asked in interviews if you are applying for a junior roles. So I'll start from there. Not just that, I'll also demonstrate how can we write something locally on your computer and how can I push it to the central Git. Okay, so without any waste of time, let's get started. So today's agenda is going to be quite minimal. We're going to talk about what is Git versus what is GitHub. So we already discussed that it is a version control system, but we didn't discuss about what is Git versus GitHub. We'll talk about it. And also we'll hear the term local version control system versus remote version control system. We'll discuss both of them. And also we'll try to understand how the mechanism of Git works. So how Git comes to know every change that you make on the top of your file or on the top of your repository, how Git comes to know that it has to track or it has to monitor the particular file. So that is also something I'm going to talk. And along with that, what are the changes that you made? How can you push it or how can you update your changes to GitHub is also something I'm going to talk. All right. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So all I'm going to do is on my computer, in yesterday's session, I have demonstrated we are going to install Git Bash. Git Bash is like a terminal to execute Git-based commands on the top of Windows. If you are using MacBook, you can simply install Git by using brew install Git. That's something I have mentioned yesterday. So the item that you see on the left on your computer, we are going to install editor. So Microsoft VS Code is one of the most popular editor. So we are going to write something on the top of this, and then we are going to push the code, and then we are going to see the changes on the top of it. Okay, that is a demo. And how your computer authenticates to something on the top of the GitHub is also something we are going to talk. And on GitHub, how the authentication works by using PAT token. It's also called as a personal access token is something we're going to talk. So let's get started. Now, the very first thing that you need to do, let's try to open it. Here I have a lot of repositories, and one among the repositories cart. Okay, now what I would like to do is I would like to download this repository. How can I download that? Okay, all you need to do is select the repository. Repository is a Linux based terminology to represent a folder or a place where you are going to store something which can be utilized by multiple people, whether it can be in the internet or it can be in the organization. Repository is a Linux based word to represent that I am sharing something so that others can use it. Okay, that is the main word of okay usage of the repository. So I'm going to download it. So if it is a public based repository, you can download. Anyone in the internet can download. This repository can be public or private. If it is public, anyone in the internet can download it. Okay, when I say download, in the terminology of Git, we call it as a clone. But if it is a private repository, that means no one else can download apart from who has access. That means if they know the username and password, or if they know if they are authenticated to the GitHub, then only they can download. So let me try to download it. So there are two options, HTTPS based, SSH based. Let's go with HTTPS based. Copy this. All you need to do is on your Windows, if you're using Windows, just say git bash. Okay, git bash offers you a local terminal. And here, what I'm gonna do is I'll say mkdir learn git. Since this is a Git tutorial, so I'm gonna go with learn git. Done. Now I'll do a git clone. Git clone is a command where you're telling Git to download this particular repository whose name is cart on your computer. So git clone is one of the command that we are learning. So clone is a command, it's just like download. So for example, there is a file in Google Drive, or for example, there is a file on AWS S3 bucket. By using wget command or by using double click download, you're downloading something, right? Similarly, git clone is a command where you're asking it that I want to download the entire repository. It really doesn't matter whether it is 10 MB, 20 MB, or 100 MB. Whatever is there on the top of it, it's going to be downloaded. That means this repository is public, and that's the reason you're able to download. I'll hit enter. Now this repository is going to be downloaded. Okay, fine. Now, coming back to the same question, you have installed Git locally. If it is Windows, we use Git bash, right? Now, in the beginning of the session, we also discussed about what is Git versus GitHub, or we can also call it as a local Git versus remote Git. Okay, this is very important thing. And if you're a newbie in the space of Git, you should know this. Okay, so first thing, Git is a version control system that is developed by the developers to make their life easy. As a part of the open source project, a lot of developers, they develop the code, and at certain stages the code will work. They want to enhance on the top of what is working, and they fail, and they want to go back to the previous version. And that's the reason Linus Torvalds, who is the chief in developing the Linux kernel, the person who developed the Linux kernel is the same person who developed Git. Okay, that means 99% of the software projects that are there in the enterprise are on the top of Linus Torvalds' invention. So Git is a local version control system. So before you push something to GitHub, you should have something locally. That means Git is a local version control system. Okay, Git is a local version control system, or Git bash that you have installed, and that means this your Git that you have installed is a local version control system. Local version control system, local to your computer. Okay, you developed something on your computer. Let's assume that this is your computer, and you have developed, or you added some features, or you wrote some script on the top of your computer where you have Git installed. Okay, fine. Perfect. Now you come here, and this is your computer, and you have Git bash installed on it, which is nothing but you have Git version control system of local edition, which you have. So on your computer, you have done some changes on the top of the repository whose name is cart. Whose name is cart. Now assume your name is Mike. Okay, let's assume you have name is Mike. Similarly, you have another user in your company who is also working on cart. Okay, his name is Steve. Now, how Steve comes to know what are the changes that are made by Mike? Okay, because he wants to develop one feature, but he don't want to reinvent the wheel. He just need to copy what Mike has, and then he need to add something on the top of it. And for that to happen, whatever the changes that Mike is making locally, if he is keeping locally, no one can use it. And that's the reason if you are using GitHub, or if you're using a version control system, the idealistic way is you should not keep any of your changes locally for a long time. So for example, today morning you have made some changes, you have updated some changes, you need to push it to the GitHub. Okay, GitHub is called as a remote version control system. Okay, remote VCS. Okay, and this GitHub can be again on the top of a server. Okay, so a lot of companies, what they do is they are going to install GitHub on the top of again a Linux server, and that's the reason from the beginning we are telling Linux is inevitable. So this can be again on the top of a Linux machine. Okay, where we are going to buy GitHub enterprise license. Okay, organizations, not you. Okay, GitHub enterprise license, and they are going to install the GitHub software, and they are going to activate it by using GitHub enterprise license. This way the code of your company would still be residing on the top of your company itself. So this is one way. Or you can also use GitHub SaaS based solution, software as a service. So you don't have to worry about anything here. You are responsible for managing your Linux machine, and you are responsible for managing the GitHub software that is offered by Microsoft. Okay, So where a lot of companies does that. But if yours is a startup, or if you don't want to maintain these things, and if yours is an open source project, a lot of companies also go with the GitHub SaaS based model. That means Microsoft is going to do the setup on behalf of you somewhere else in their data center, and they are going to just give you the URL where you can sign in by using your username and password. So here in our case, we are also using the SaaS edition. Okay, and here also we are using SaaS edition because I am not maintaining any of the changes. Okay, I'm not maintaining any of the server, or I'm not maintaining any licenses that are related to GitHub. So anything is fine, but majority of the times, if you are looking at enterprise, they maintain their own GitHub server. Okay, fine. Now I'm going to develop things, or I'm going to clone and make changes on my repository, and then I'm going to push it. Okay, so I'm saying upload. Okay, so upload is nothing but git push. Okay, when I say git push, you're asking Git to push the changes. Okay, so now what Steve does, and if Steve wants the changes that whatever you have pulled, what he does is he just say I want this. Okay, and he uses a command called as git, and uses something called as git pull. Okay, you are supposed to use git clone only when you are downloading the repository for the first time. From the second time, you don't have to use git clone. Git clone is like you're having a 100 GB file, and all the 100 GB files will be downloaded. Git pull is like whatever the changes that are there on the 100 GB, only those will be downloaded. So once you have made a git clone, you don't have to do a git clone every time. Instead, you can do a git. Okay, now let's get started with a practical thing. Now I have cloned the repository. Okay, fine. Now what I would like to do, ls-ltr. Now I would like to open this repository. Okay, so code is a Visual Studio Code command where it is going to open the changes, open the folder in the Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a very famous integrated development environment. It is also referred as an IDE. A lot of people uses Notepad, okay, when they are learning something, but do not use Notepad. Instead, use Visual Studio Code. The Visual Studio Code, or IDE, offers very comprehensive way of picturizing the things, so that you waste less time in identifying the syntax based mistakes. Okay, fine. Okay, so in the yesterday's session, I have mentioned to install GitHub VS Code. Okay, fine. Now I got it. Now here, what I'm going to do is, okay, now I have cloned it, right? Now I would like to update some changes. Okay, let's not worry about what each and everything does. Now I would like to update it. Okay, I'm planning to update the value of 100 to 200, and then I also want to update the value of cart with cart. Okay, now how Git comes to know whatever the changes that you are making needs to be captured. Okay, that's a very important thing. Click on the terminal, you'll get a local terminal in the Visual Studio Code itself. Okay, now what you need to do is you can run a command called as git status. Now git status is a command that tells you whether Git is really monitoring what you're doing or not. We learned that Git is a version control system, but how do you come to know whether Git is really monitoring your changes or not? Git status is a command that is going to tell you what all files are changed and what Git is not monitoring it. You can see that there is a file called as a package.json. We did some changes, but Git is not monitoring it. Okay, that means whatever the files that are there in the working directory, okay, those are not being monitored by the Git, but I want Git to monitor it. Okay, all you need to do is git add either file name or git add dot. Okay, that means Git is going to start tracking or start monitoring all the changes that you are going to make. Okay, now if you look at Git status, now Git has started monitoring it. It says someone has modified this file, and it also says something called as changes to be committed. What is this working directory? What is this Git status? I didn't understand, and why Git is asking me changes to be committed, and what is commit? Let's discuss this. And this is very important thing to know. Okay, so whenever you're using Git, okay, you hear a couple of terms called as commit, push, staging directory. So let's try to understand that. Okay, whenever you're talking about Git, okay, Git has two places. Okay, so working directory is nothing but the place where your files are residing, and whatever the changes that you are making on the top of your working directory, Git is least bothered about it, and it's not going to track the changes that you are going to make. But if you want to tell Git, hey, I want to start tracking all the changes that people are making or that the user X is doing, then you need to use a command called as git add. Either you can use git add file name or git add dot. Then Git is going to start tracking all the files that are there in the working directory. That means the moment you use git add dot, the files that are there in your working directory will move to the Git's staging area. Staging area is a place where Git is going to monitor all the changes that you are going to make. And once you are comfortable with the changes that you have made on your repository or on your files, and if you want to tell Git, hey, whatever the changes that I made, I want to save them. Okay, it's also called as I want to commit them. Okay, the moment you say commit, okay, now the changes that are committed, okay, that the changes that are going to be saved on the staging area will be considered as they are in the local repository. Okay, I repeat, git add is a command that is going to place all the files in the working directory to the staging directory. Now, if files are there in the staging area, now Git is going to start tracking all the changes. Whatever the changes that you made, and if you're sure that you want to save them or you want to register them, you are going to use something called as git commit. The moment you do the git commit, your changes will be there on the top of the local repository. And these are not something you would be seeing as staging. You won't see them anywhere, but behind the hoods, how Git works is this way. So that means the three commands that we use is git add, that is going to move the files that are there in working directory to the staging directory. If once your files are in the staging directory, then only Git is going to monitor the changes that you are going to make. And then if you are confident with the changes that you made, you can say git commit. That means you are telling Git, hey Git, I'm okay with the changes, feel free to commit them. And every time you commit, there will be some 30 characters, there will be one hash ID that will be registered that says this is the commit ID. Okay, how to move between the commit IDs, how to see the list of commits is something we're gonna see in tomorrow. Okay, and once you're confident that you have done the changes well, and once you committed, and if you want to push them, then you use something called as git push, that is going to push the changes to the remote repository. Okay, let me try to show you practically. Okay, so let me try to show you practically. Let me switch to Visual Studio Code and let me show you that. Now I have done git add dot. That means all your changes are going to be tracked. Okay, that means the files that are available in the working directory will be moved to the staging directory. Now I would like to commit. Every time you make some changes, okay, you need to give the commit message, which makes more sense. Okay, for example, I need to say updated the cart version to 2.0.0. Okay, so the commit messages should make really more sense because people don't have that much patience to go through the commits and all. So git commit -m is a command where you're telling Git to commit your changes. That means you're telling Git to push the changes to the local repository. That means from the staging directory, your files will be moved to the repository. That's it. Now, what's next? Your changes are there. Now, what you need to do? All you need to do is you can push it. Now here you can see on your GitHub, you come to the repository cart and you can come into the cart. And if you look at this server.js, not server.js, package.json, let's not worry about what each and everything does. Only worry about how the mechanism is working. Now here you can see it is showing as 100, right? Okay, 100. Can you see this? It says 00. Now, if you try to do a git push, the changes that you made will be pushed to, okay. Now, if you see this, you try to push, but it says, hey, invalid username or password. Yes, even though it is a public repository, anyone can download, but it doesn't mean that anyone can push. Okay, so only the person who is authenticated and authorized can do that. Okay, how can you generate that? Okay, so GitHub uses something called as PAT. PAT is also called as a personal access token, and that is a default mechanism that GitHub uses. Okay, so we need to generate it. And on your GitHub profile, on the right corner, you have something called as avatar icon. Okay, so select this, and then at the bottom you have an option called as settings. Select this settings option, and then you have an option called as, okay, developer settings at the bottom. Select this, and then go with the PAT. PAT stands for personal access token, and that is the highly endorsed authentication mechanism that's used by GitHub. Okay, so earlier even GitHub used to encourage SSH keys, but PAT is a standard. Okay, so go to the classic token and generate a new token, and then in my case, I have an authentication code. Okay, yeah, this is the problem. Okay, I have selected the fine grain token. So assuming it is a classic, please select the classic token. Okay, so go with the classic token, and I'm gonna mention it as a learn-git, and then select what all permissions that you would like to give. Okay, so for example, if you're using if your tokens multiple places, you can generate multiple tokens and you can control what all access that you would like to give. But I would like to give all the read, write, admin permission, everything to it. But if the token that you are going to use is for any application that just needs full access or write access, you don't have to give everything. Okay, now I got the token, I copied it. I would like to push it one more time. Now it is asking me to enter the token, select the token, sign in, boom, your changes are pushed. Okay, now you can come here, and if you look at the repository, you should be able to see the cart. You have updated the value from 100 to 3200, and whatever the changes that you make, everything is going to be captured here. You can clearly see that I have updated the version to cart 200. It clearly says who has done the changes. Coding Manoj has done the changes, and the changes that he have made was 100 is upgraded to 200, and the value of cart is moved to cart with uppercase letters. That's how we are going to push the changes from your local Git to the remote Git. But another important point, yesterday I have mentioned it. You never ever push any changes directly to the Git main branch. Okay, so that is not the case. And in reality, in any of the enterprise, you cannot push any of the changes directly to the main branch. Okay, it goes by a pull request. Okay, how it goes, how in reality we raise a pull request, and who is going to approve, and if I didn't like the changes, if I want to go back, how can I go back, is something that we're going to see in tomorrow's session. And if you like the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for the more technical content, and watch out this channel, and tomorrow's session is going to be quite interesting, and please practice them and leave your thoughts. Thank you.